Imagine walking into a clinic, laying down on a sterile table, pointing at some high-tech machine you barely understand, and just having your fat completely frozen off.
With absolutely zero physical preparation.
Exactly. No warm-up, no nervous system acclimation, just a flip of a switch and a sudden plunge into sub-zero temperatures.
It sounds kind of sci-fi,
Yeah.
but that is actually the standard operating procedure right now.
Yeah, in the multi-billion-dollar aesthetics industry, you're basically jumping from 0 to 100 in a matter of seconds. Welcome to the deep dive. We've got a massive stack of sources today.
We really do. Informational materials,
Yeah.
treatment protocols, web pages.
All centered on this fascinating shift in the evolving world of aesthetic beauty treatments.
Because, it is an industry that often feels simultaneously intimidating and generic. You have all these incredibly advanced devices, lasers, freezing paddles, electromagnetic stimulators.
But the consumer experience itself is frequently treated like a fast food drive-thru.
Right. You order a service, the technician applies the machine, and you're sent on your way.
And that is exactly what we are focusing on today, because our sources point to one specific clinic that is actively challenging that totally clinical, disjointed approach. They are called BodySlim.
Operating out of Ballarat, Australia.
Yes, and they've developed this proprietary body sculpting method called ContourIQ. In an industry dominated by that one-size-fits-all vibe, they are doing something radically different.
They're utilizing an activation-first approach.
Okay, let's unpack this. What exactly does it mean to activate the body before sculpting it? And why does this structural shift matter so much to you as the client?
Well, to understand why activation is such a huge paradigm shift, we really have to look at the physiology of what usually happens.
Right.
In standard body sculpting, there is no runway. You arrive, and the practitioner jumps straight into the core procedure. Whether that's causing cellular death through freezing or forcing intense muscle contractions, the body is caught entirely off guard.
It makes me think of going to the gym.
Oh, that's a good comparison.
Yeah, like if you walk into a weight room and immediately try to deadlift your absolute maximum weight without stretching or without doing any light cardio to get the blood flowing.
Your body goes into shock.
Exactly. You are begging for an injury. You have to warm up the tissue before a heavy session rather than just sprinting cold.
That is a perfect physiological comparison.
Yeah.
And what ContourIQ does is engineer a highly intentional warm-up phase specifically for the targeted fat cells and the surrounding tissue.
Okay.
It begins by activating the treatment area using laser lipolysis pads.
Now, laser lipolysis sounds like a really heavy scientific term. I look at this and my skeptical brain immediately activates.
Yeah.
I mean, is this just a fancy way to add an extra 20 minutes to a session to justify a premium price tag?
Yep.
The sources describe the physical sensation as absolutely pain-free, just a gentle warmth on the skin.
Right.
So biologically speaking, what is a gentle warmth actually doing to justify the time?
What's fascinating here is the precise biological mechanism triggered by that specific wavelength of laser light. It is absolutely not just a heating pad to make you feel cozy.
Okay.
The laser energy actually penetrates the skin and targets the adipocytes, the fat cells. When these cells absorb that specific light energy, a temporary chemical signal is triggered.
What kind of signal?
It actually causes pores to open up in the membrane of the fat cell.
Wait, really? It physically pokes holes in the fat cells?
Temporary pores, yes. And through those tiny pores, the stored contents of the fat cell, so water, glycerol, and free fatty acids, they begin to spill out into the interstitial space.
Could just what?
The fluid-filled area surrounding the cell, so the fat cell basically deflates like a leaky balloon.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so before the intense sculpting tools are even touched, you have fundamentally altered the state of the target area. The cells are primed, the local circulation is increased to help flush out those free fatty acids, and the tissue is deeply prepped.
So it's not just warming up the skin, it's chemically signaling the fat cells to start releasing their contents. That completely changes how I view the gentle warmth thing.
Exactly.
But there has to be a psychological component to this as well, right? When you walk into a clinic to have your body evaluated and altered, your guard is up.
Oh, definitely. Your nervous system is probably in a mild state of fight or flight.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So by starting with a non-invasive, painless process that just feels warm, you are downregulating the client's sympathetic nervous system.
Making them feel comfortable.
Right. You are taking them out of fight or flight and signaling that they are safe. It builds subconscious trust. By the time the more intense sculpting technologies are applied, the body and the mind are both receptive.
And that leads us perfectly into the actual sculpting toolkit. Because once this foundation is laid, the ContourIQ method moves into the heavy hitters.
Yes, the active phase.
The sources note they target areas like the abdominal region, the legs, the arms, the chin, and even what they refer to as bra back fat.
Which requires a really sophisticated combination of technologies.
Yeah.
The most prominent one in their arsenal is cryolipolysis.
Commonly known as fat freezing. Let's talk about the freezing, because whenever we discuss plunging human tissue to sub-zero temperatures, the immediate question every single person has is, does this hurt?
It is the single biggest barrier to entry. The fear of pain keeps countless people away from aesthetics.
And BodySlim is surprisingly transparent in their documentation about this. They don't pretend it feels like a massage from second one.
No, they don't.
They explicitly state that the fat freezing process starts off feeling slightly uncomfortable for a few minutes.
But then, crucially, the entire area goes completely numb for the remainder of the treatment.
Okay.
And to understand why that happens and why fat freezing works at all, we really have to look at the cellular response to cold.
I've always wondered about this because if I put an ice pack on my stomach, I don't lose weight. So what is the machine doing differently?
Right.
I like to think of it like leaving a can of soda in the freezer. If you leave it in there too long, the liquid inside expands and crystallizes until the aluminum can actually burst. Is that what is happening to the fat?
That analogy is remarkably accurate, actually. The scientific term is apoptosis, which is essentially programmed cell death.
Okay.
Fat cells, or adipocytes, are much more sensitive to cold than skin cells, muscle tissue, or nerves. The cryolipolysis machine carefully lowers the temperature to around 4 degrees Celsius.
And that's the sweet spot.
Yes, at that specific temperature, the skin and the nerves are perfectly fine, which is why the area simply goes numb after the initial chilling phase. But the fat cells, they freeze.
So the fat inside the cell crystallizes, just like the soda can.
Exactly. The crystallization causes the membrane of the fat cell to rupture. The cell dies, and over the next few weeks, your body's immune system sends in specialized cells called macrophages.
To clean up the mess.
Yeah, to literally eat the dead cell debris and carry it away through the lymphatic system. That is why they can promise nil downtime.
Because you aren't recovering from a wound.
Right. You haven't cut the skin. You haven't damaged the surrounding tissue. You've just triggered a targeted biological cleanup process.
Uncomfortable for a few minutes, numb for the rest, and then you just get dressed and go back to your day while your immune system does the heavy lifting. That makes sense.
It's very efficient.
But the toolkit doesn't stop at freezing. The materials also detail the use of EMSO, electrical muscle stimulation. And this is where something truly revolutionary stood out to me regarding client comfort.
Yeah, the way they deploy the EMS is a massive departure from industry norms.
Right. With the ContourIQ method, the client actually gets to control the setting on the EMS machine based on their own personal tolerance.
Which is huge.
Yeah.
But let's break down what EMS actually is first.
Yeah, biologically, what is this machine doing to the muscles?
So EMS bypasses your brain's normal communication pathways. Normally, if you want to flex your abdominal muscles, your brain sends an electrical signal down your spinal cord to the motor neurons in your stomach. An EMS device places pads on the skin that deliver controlled electrical impulses directly to those motor neurons. It forces the muscle to contract deeply and rapidly, often at a rate and intensity you couldn't achieve voluntarily.
Which sounds incredibly intense. I can totally see why someone would be nervous about hooking themselves up to an electrical grid, basically.
And this raises an important question about how standard beauty treatments operate and why they often feel so clinical. Usually, the practitioner holds all the power.
They have the dial.
Right. They set the dial on the EMS machine. If the current is too strong and it hurts, the client feels like a passive participant. They either have to sheepishly ask the technician to turn it down, or they just grit their teeth and bear it because they think pain equals results.
But handing the dial directly to the client completely rewrites that dynamic. They get to say, okay, this is my threshold today.
It changes the neuroception of pain. When your brain knows it is in control of the stimulus, the fear response plummets.
That makes so much sense.
You aren't bracing for a sudden shock from an outside source. You are managing your own therapy. It synthesizes efficacy with client autonomy.
Wow.
The entire system, from the chemical preparation of the activation phase, to the transparency about the freezing discomfort, to handing over control of the electrical stimulation, is engineered to remove the feeling of being a passive patient.
It takes the anxiety completely out of the room. When you step back and look at how carefully constructed this whole physiological and psychological flow is, you really have to wonder about the architect behind it.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, who sits down and designs a body sculpting treatment with this specific level of structural empathy?
That brings us to the creator of the ContourIQ method, Tanya White, who is the owner and operator of Body Slim.
And it is worth noting again that Body Slim is operating out of a private home salon in Ballarat. This isn't some massive corporate chain in a high-rent district in Sydney or Melbourne.
Right. It is a highly private, one-on-one setting.
But when you look through Tanya White's resume in these sources, the scope of her expertise is genuinely surprising.
Her qualifications span several completely different professional arenas.
Here's where it gets really interesting. She isn't just someone who bought a few aesthetic machines and opened up shop. She is a nationally accredited trainer holding a certificate for in training and assessment.
Yes.
She is a certified life coach. She holds CPD certificates not just in advanced beauty therapy, but in clinical nursing skills and nursing studies diet therapy.
And we can't forget.
Oh, right. She also holds a certificate in artificial intelligence, specifically focused on ChatGPT.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this multidisciplinary background is the skeleton key that explains the entire ContourIQ methodology. Nothing about this protocol is random.
So how does a background in nursing and life coaching translate into freezing fat cells?
Well, think about the core tenets of clinical nursing. In a medical environment, protocol, structure, and patient care are absolutely paramount.
You can't just wing it.
Exactly. You don't just randomly apply a treatment. There is a strict order of operations to ensure safety and biological efficacy. You prep the site, you administer the treatment, you monitor the patient, you manage the aftermath.
Right.
Tanya has taken that rigorous clinical mindset and applied it to a salon environment.
So that explains the activation first approach. It's a clinical protocol designed to prep the tissue, just like a nurse would prep a patient for a procedure.
Precisely. And then you layer in the life coach certification. What's a life coach do? They are trained to actively listen.
Yeah.
They dig into a client's underlying motivations and insecurities, and they guide them without judgment. That is why the environment in Ballarat is designed to be low pressure.
Because it's an emotional thing.
Very much so. She understands that when someone comes in wanting to change their body, they are bringing emotional baggage with them. She isn't just treating a physical layer of adipose tissue. She is managing a complex human experience.
And the proof that this structured, empathetic approach works is that she isn't just keeping this to herself. Body Slim also functions as a training academy, and she is exporting this methodology all over the world.
Yeah, the sources include several verified success stories from professionals she has trained.
The geographical spread of these trainees is pretty wild.
It's a testament to the universal appeal of the method.
You have Natalie Franco, who runs EIR Lymphatics in Miami, USA, who utilized the Ultimate Body Contouring Training Package.
Right.
You've got Bonnie Forrester from Bodies by Bonnie in Perth, Western Australia, applying the methods to her local market.
And Lorraine McConnell from Beautiful You in Benidorm, Spain.
Yes. She specifically highlighted Tanya's training on the G5 lymphatic machine, calling it more informative than any other online course she'd ever taken.
And that mention of the G5 lymphatic machine is a crucial piece of the physiological puzzle we were talking about earlier. Remember how the frozen fat cells are eaten by macrophages?
And they need to be flushed out by the lymphatic system.
Right.
The body's internal cleanup crew.
Well, the lymphatic system doesn't have a pump like the circulatory system has the heart. It relies on muscle movement to push the fluid along.
Okay, so what does the G5 do?
A G5 machine is a clinical percussive massage device. It uses deep mechanical vibration to physically and manually stimulate that lymphatic drainage.
Oh, that makes sense.
Tanya, training clinics in Spain on how to properly use this machine, shows that she is ensuring the final step of the biological process, the flushing of the dead cells, is handled just as rigorously as the freezing.
It really is a full circle protocol, from the laser lipolysis warm-up to the freezing to the lymphatic drainage. But let's ground this in reality for a second.
Sure.
If you were to walk into this clinic in Ballarat today, what does the actual client journey look like? Because, I mean, all this science sounds incredibly expensive and intimidating.
The entry point is specifically designed to dismantle those exact barriers. It begins with an entirely free, pressure-free consultation.
And they specifically note in their FAQs what you should wear to this consult. They say, just wear comfy clothes. Leggings or a tracksuit are perfectly fine.
That detail alone speaks volumes about the psychology of the space. Think about a traditional high-end medical spa.
You feel like you need to dress up.
Right. You walk into a sterile, ultra-modern lobby, the staff are in pristine clinical whites, and you immediately feel underdressed, hyper-aware of your body, and judged.
Yeah, it's terrible.
By explicitly telling clients to arrive at a tracksuit, Body Slim is neutralizing that status anxiety before you even walk through the door.
And here's the kicker. You don't even need to know what treatment you want when you book the consultation.
No, not at all.
They actually say that's exactly what the free consult is for. You just show up, talk through your goals, and they figure out how the ContourIQ method fits your specific biology. Plus, they give clients a free red light therapy session just for attending.
Which is another scientifically backed modality. Red light therapy, or photobiomodulation, uses specific wavelengths of light to stimulate the mitochondria in your cells.
Giving them a boost.
Basically, yeah. Boosting ATP production, giving your cells more energy to repair and rejuvenate the skin. Offering this for free is an immediate delivery of tangible biological value before a single dollar has changed hands.
Okay, but I have to play devil's advocate here because we've all fallen for this. Free consults in the beauty, wellness, and fitness industries usually mean one thing.
A brutal, high-pressure sales pitch.
Exactly. You sit down, they shine a harsh light on you, point out all your flaws, and then slide a massive contract across the desk while you are feeling terrible about yourself. How does a business survive giving away consultations and red light therapy without using high-pressure tactics?
It's a totally valid skepticism because the industry has trained us to expect the trap. But the source material addresses this head-on. They explicitly promise there is zero pressure to book a package after the consult.
So they just let you walk out the door if you want to.
Yes. The consultation is framed entirely around education and biological clarity. And from a business perspective, counterintuitive as it may seem, this strategy builds incredibly deep, resilient trust.
Because you aren't being forced into anything.
Right. Modern consumers are exhausted by the hard sell, especially in an environment where they already feel vulnerable. By removing the sales pressure, Tanya relies entirely on the scientific strength of her methodology and the interpersonal skills she honed as a life coach.
That is such a smart approach.
When a client feels heard, medically safe, and unpressured, their psychological resistance drops.
Yeah.
They don't feel like they're being sold to, they feel like they're being partnered with.
And when they do decide to commit to that partnership, what does the actual timeline look like? Because if the body takes weeks to flush out these dead fat cells via the lymphatic system, this can't be a magic wand in 1 hour situation.
Exactly. The biological reality dictates the schedule. The baseline expectation set by ContourIQ is 3 sessions in a single target area, spaced 4 weeks apart.
4 weeks apart, which aligns perfectly with the time it takes for the macrophages to clear out the crystallized adipocytes.
It is a dedicated 12-week process per area. It echoes that clinical realism rather than a flashy, impossible salon gimmick. It sets clear, physiologically achievable expectations.
So what does this all mean? When we step back and look at the whole picture of Body Slim and this ContourIQ method, a few key insights really emerge for you.
Yeah, definitely.
First, the industry standard of jumping straight into a cold, intense treatment is a choice, not a biological necessity. The activation-first strategy using laser lipolysis to chemically prep the fat cells proves that the warm-up is just as critical as the heavy lifting.
The structural flow dictates the physical results.
Right. And secondly, we see the sheer power of blending completely different disciplines. When you combine the rigorous protocol of clinical nursing, the empathetic communication of life coaching, and an intricate understanding of cellular biology.
You end up with a service that flips the traditional power dynamic.
Exactly. You give the client the dial to the EMS machine. You tell them to show up in a tracksuit. You prioritize their autonomy above all else.
It fundamentally reframes the consumer relationship with aesthetic technology. It removes the fear and replaces it with participation.
Mm-hmm.
And, it leaves us with an intriguing thought about the future of this space.
What's that?
Consider the fact that a body sculpting expert operating out of a private salon in regional Australia holds a certificate in artificial intelligence alongside her clinical nursing skills.
Yeah, that is fascinating.
As we move forward, how will AI and rigorous medical training continue to merge to hyper-personalize our everyday wellness routines? Will AI soon be analyzing our lymphatic responses to perfectly time these treatments? The convergence of these fields is really only just beginning.
That is a brilliant question to leave you with. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the science and the methods behind your everyday routines. Look for the underlying structure in the services you use, and we will catch you next time.